We're full-time traveling nomads living as locals in Brisbane, Australia. We're going to tell you a bunch of tips about how you should live as a local if you're a full-time traveler too. So, why did we pick Brisbane?
Well, Brisbane is the third largest city in Australia, but also when we designed our plan of how we were going to travel through Australia in 6 months, we decided that we wanted to start in the northern section of the country and work our way south. And that's because we wanted to take advantage of the nice summer weather in the summer in the south of Australia.
Right, and summer is January.
Right.
Or December when Santa Claus comes.
Right.
So it was, looking at the geography of Brisbane, or of Australia, Brisbane made sense as a good place to start. So that's where we went. Before we share our first tip, we just want to introduce ourselves. I'm Chris.
Hi, I'm Steve.
We're Eat, Walk, Learn. We sold everything back in May of 21, our car, our house, and everything in it, left Denver, Colorado, and we've been traveling full-time ever since with our 2 carry-on bags. So tip number 1 about being a local in Brisbane. First, you got to decide that you're a local.
That's right. Decide where you're a local. And the best way to live like a local is to live in a community where locals live. And we kind of struggle with this a little bit because we want to go to the city, we want to go to the city center and stay in nice hotels, but that's not what the locals do. And it's really hard to feel like a local when you're staying in a hotel. So tip number 1 is stay in a community that may be a little bit outside the city center and do a house sit. That way you've got the house, you might have the use of a car, you really can feel like you're part of the community.
Right, and we love house sitting. We do it through Trusted Housesiters. We've done a lot of videos about house sitting. You can watch them up here. If you don't do house sitting, get an Airbnb or get a long stay hotel or something like that. So you're actually living within the community. So that's tip number 1. So we ended up in a little town called Wynnum, which was about a 25 or 30-minute train ride outside of Brisbane. But one of the things that we really want to make sure that we did was to get to know Brisbane. So the first thing we did, so tip number 2, is we went on a walking tour in Brisbane. Now, fortunately, we had some fabulous viewers, Scotty and Jenny, hi guys, reach out to us. They're from the Brisbane area, and they said, hey, let's take you on a walking tour of Brisbane. Isn't that great?
Yeah, and they were, lifetime. I mean, they grew up there in that particular area, so they had a lot of interest and a lot of experiences and things that they could share with us. It took us for this great walking tour along the river, and that's really one of the unique things about Brisbane to experience, and that's one of the things that we're looking for. We want to know what's quintessential, what's really unique about this particular city.
Right, and if you don't have local friends taking you out for a walk, no problem. There's often free walking tours, which are tours that you sign up for. Usually you can just show up, and then they're not free. It's a tip-based culture, so you would show up and then you would tip the guide, and these are all over the world. So just Google free walking tour, free walking tour Brisbane, free walking tour, Alicante, Spain, wherever, and you'll find those free walking tours. But another thing we really, really love is using an app called GPS My City. So GPS My City. When we worked with Jenny and Scotty, we actually went back to Brisbane and we did the GPS My City walking tours for Brisbane. We did a couple of them. One of them was really cool. It took us out through the clock tower, and in the app it told us at 2 o'clock on Tuesdays or something, and it happened to be 2 o'clock on Tuesday. We got a free tour up into the clock tower. So I took advantage of that. We walked over the pedestrian bridge. We went over to Street Beach. And really admired the architecture that you really like about Brisbane.
Right. And that really leads us into tip number 3, which is to experience what is quintessential, and this is what we're talking about. What makes Brisbane unique and what makes it special, and really get an opportunity to take the time to experience those things. So just walking around, but going to the museums, experiencing some of the local food.
Yeah, and what was great about Brisbane is that the museums were free, so that was really cool.
Yeah,
we went to the Queensland Museum, learned all about just the history of how the convicts had come to Brisbane to set up the city. We also learned in the art museum that there was a movement in the 1970s to really discover that Australia has its own art scene, and we learned a lot about the Aboriginal art and the storytelling that's told through Aboriginal art, which was really fascinating. We actually had left the museum, and I said to Steve, "Did you see that one piece?" And I'm going to put it up here on the screen. He's like, No, I didn't see it. And so I took them back into the museum to see it because it was so fascinating about Aboriginal art. So really great time.
It was beautiful.
Yeah.
And also, one of the things that's really, again, we talked about what's unique about Brisbane is the river. And we had an opportunity with our friends Kathy and Tim to just get on one of the actually free little transit taxi ferries that they have that go up and down the river to different places on the river to people maybe to just want to cross it or to go to different parts of the city. And we just, toured the river and just really had a great time just being able to see the city from a different angle and different perspective.
So that's kind of a sub-tip 3A. Use the local transit to be to do tours within the city because the transit is going where the tourists want to go too. So just take advantage of that. And in Brisbane, it was free. The water taxis were free. Okay, so tip number 4 is get to know the natural environment as well and what is unique around the natural environment. So our friends Tim and Kathy, again, we managed to get a car and we went up. We saw waterfalls and koalas and kangaroos and panda melons and birds, and we went wine tasting with them. They're wine tasters, and there's a little subsection of the Australian wine community here outside of Brisbane. We got a chance to go do some wine tasting with them. And remember that guy that we met on the trail that had been to the States? Remember what he said?
Yeah, and this is actually, again, another one of our tips is to talk to the locals and get to know, the people's story. But we were on the trail and we saw an animal in the forest, and he told us all about it. We didn't know what it was. And then he was like so surprised he found out that we were from the United States, and he was like, "Oh, you have those things called squirrels." And
he was fascinated by the squirrels.
He was fascinated by squirrels. We're fascinated by their live wildlife,
panda melons and tawny frogmouths, and we have a video that of the wild, wacky Australia that we've already experienced. You can watch that if you like, about all the different animals that we saw.
Exactly.
And then tip number 5 is. Did we ask people to subscribe yet?
Please subscribe.
Thank you. Is really experience. If you want to live like a local, you've got to enjoy the community like a local and use the local infrastructure of the community. So the library, you went to the library, you took a class there, right?
Yeah, I took a Canva class that was being offered free at the library, which was really, really great. I also did a Tai Chi class that was done by the community was offering that down by the waterfront. And we were living in Wynnum, which was just outside of Brisbane on the waterfront. A beautiful place, a great place to ride bikes, to go for walks. I went for a run.
We went and played pickleball. So here's a tip for all the pickleballers out there. And when you join a local community to play, often they'll have free time in the morning and free time in the evening or drop-in time. We found that the morning time has an older crowd and the evening time has a younger crowd. So if you're of a certain age, maybe the earlier people might be more your speed than the younger people that are just getting off work and still have energy at 25 years old. So anyway, enjoyed some pickleball. But one of the really fun things we did.
Yes. There was a local fair going on that started again just down the street from where we were staying.
It was called the Wynnum Fringe. Now, you might know Fringe. Scotland has a very famous Fringe festival in Edinburgh. It's a large event with performing artists and fine artists, all in a very creative, interactive, live, multi-venue series of events over a series of weeks. The same thing happened here in Wynnum. It was a 2-week-long festival of all kinds of crazy things. And one of the crazy things we accidentally walked into.
Well, we walked by this building. It was kind of like a large tent area. And there was a sign out front of the different events that were happening in that particular venue. And it said that the choir was performing. And it was coming up in like 15 minutes. And we were like, oh, let's go listen to the choir in this, community. It's got to be good, right? And we walked in, and after a few minutes, we figured out that we were the choir. And this is a thing in Australia where people get together and sing songs. And it turns out this was actually, they were recording a radio show. What was really funny was that as they were preparing and people were coming in, there was a host that was up on stage, and she asked, well, where are you from? And people were like yelling out communities, that were like, 10 kilometers away or 20 kilometers away. And then Chris here yells out, Denver, Colorado. Everybody goes crazy. Oh my God, you came here to do this singing.
You came to little old Wynnum from Denver, Colorado.
Just here. So
she pulls us up on stage. So we get called up on stage, and we go through where you're from, why you're traveling, blah 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 blah. And we go through all this, right? And then what happens?
And then what happens?
And so we find out that this is being recorded and it's going to be on the radio the next morning. So that evening, I guess there was probably a couple hundred people there that were all at the choir together.
Anyway, singing's a blast.
Yeah.
Do this,
Yeah. So then we ended up going out to dinner that night. There was another little festival thing going on. It was outdoors. There was a guy playing a piano. And we sit down, we're eating some pizza. And this couple comes up and they're like, you're the Denver, Colorado people. And we're like, yeah, like, how do you know? You've got a great voice and we love listening to you sing. And, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, they sat down for an hour and just chit-chatted with us. And lo and behold, we find out they live 2 houses down from where we were living in Wynnum. Right. So it was just this beautiful synergy of living in the community, getting to know the community, meeting the community, and the community meeting us back. And really made us feel home and welcome and living like a local outside of Brisbane in a little tiny town called Wynnum. If you enjoyed this video, thank you. Please stay tuned and watch this next video. It's our Wild, Wacky Australia, and I'm not sure which way we'd point yet, where we show you kangaroos and koalas and all the fun things that you might expect from Australia. Talk to you soon.